Congratulations, Mr. Henrichsen. That was a great presentation. You've clearly learned so much this year and built on knowledge you already had. I have two questions, but I'll just do one for now. Do you have a particular loyalty to a bike brand?
I do. I ride a Commensal Meta, and I will continue to be riding this bike because I think they are the best and suit me and my riding style perfectly.
How?
They're just very fun, playful bikes, and they can still go fast. So it's pretty much overall the best bike for me, and I think if you are getting a mountain bike, you should get a Commensal.
How long do I have?
Sorry?
Why dry lube?
Well, the reason why you use dry lube when putting a new shift cable in is to make sure the shift cable runs smoothly through the cable housing. Also, dry lube doesn't dry up as quickly as wet lube, I'm pretty sure.
Pretty sure. What would wet lube be for?
Wet lube is for more wet, it's for more wet riding. Say you're in the winter, you're gonna put on wet lube instead of dry lube because it's obviously wetter out. It will attract more dirt and like grime onto the chain though, so that's why in the summer and dusty months you would put on dry lube.
Another Newton law. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed.
I'm pretty sure that's mass.
Oh, that's mass?
Yeah.
Well, energy as well.
Yeah.
So when you're riding down the trail, you're going fast,
Mm-hmm.
you slow down. You have a lot of energy when you're going fast. When you slow down, you have very little energy.
Yes.
You're converting that energy.
To heat, which is around the rotor.
Great, great.
Yes.
So momentum energy to heat energy.
Yes.
Good. And all this is great. You have a huge community here behind you. How is this going to affect you, or what do you take from this into your community? Not just here, but the world.
I think a big part was the bike park. I think that was a big part that I did. I actually did that for my grade 8 community service, but also just by being able to like fix friends' bikes if they need it, that could be a help. Yeah.
Cool. And then one last one. Most important tool in the bike shop.
Having a smarter mechanic like you to help me.
Great. Your brain.
Good job, Mr. Henrichsen. I was just wondering how the wheel size affects the speed and handling of the mountain bikes.
I have 27.5 wheels. A lot of the bikes used to have 26-inch, but that's kind of outdated, and a lot of bikes are on a 29er. So you have a larger circumference when you have 29er wheels, and they're also larger, which lets you roll over more things, which means you won't get stuck on as much stuff, which means you can eventually go faster. This is why a lot of downhill racers, cross-country and enduro riders are riding a 29er bike instead of 27.5.
So is 29 the best size wheel to use?
That depends on who you're asking. It's a lot of personal preference.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
And now my last question. You have pursued mountain biking, and this year you actually started to race.
Yes, I did.
What are the different types of mountain bike races, and what is your preference?
So there's cross-country racing, enduro racing, and downhill racing. There are also others like speed and style and slalom. I prefer downhill or enduro because to enduro you still have to pedal up, so you're still doing some work, but XC or cross-country is just very taxing and very tiring, and it's a lot of suffering. That's another reason I don't like it. But yeah, I would say enduro is my favorite because it's all around just riding.
And how did you do in your first race?
I placed 4th in my division.
How close were you? How close were you to third?
I was 0.6 seconds off 3rd place. Yeah.
Great. So, Viggo, I have a question. Well, actually, just a comment. You've mentioned so much about your own pursuit, the knowledge, the training, the expertise that you've now acquired. You touched on in your presentation how in 8th grade you were a catalyst for the Bowen Pump Park. Yes. Having recently enjoyed that, I'd like to thank you for that initiative. I was very interested to be in that park because, of course, as per the name, it's called a pump park. So I was wondering if you could maybe enlighten the audience as to the intricacies or the way that you have to navigate or use a pump park, because it's not like you go and pedal in there, I came
No.
to quickly realize. So thanks if you could just explain
Yes.
how pump parks work and
I can. So a pump track works by, you won't be pedaling, you'll be shifting your weight around the bike, which is also known as pumping, which you gain speed by. And then, yeah, you just don't want to pedal. That's going to mess you up, and you'll also look like a very bad mountain biker. So, yeah, it's a lot of practice as well, just to, like, really get it. So I would say just go there as much as you can, like, get someone who knows how to do it to, like, give you tips and teach you.
what would be the number one tip you would give me right now to have success in the pump track?
It's really just don't pedal and make sure you're never too far up on your bike or you have a very high chance of falling.
Good, I will make note of that. And then I just had one quick question. You mentioned a spoke calculator. Could you elaborate on what that
Yes,
is?
so spoke calculator is a good one is DT Swiss's spoke calculator. They're one of the biggest wheel manufacturers. So pretty much you'll do a bunch of measurements on your hub and then put it into a spoke calculator. This takes it all and gives you the length of how long your spoke has to be for the hub and rim. And if you don't use a spoke calculator, or if you do it yourself and get it wrong, your wheel just won't really work properly.
So it's like a tool that like sits there on the table?
No,
and
it's online.
It's online,
Yeah,
gotcha.
so if you go to DT Swiss's spoke calculator, you can find it.
Nice,
Yeah.
thank you for that. Okay, well let's open it up. We got hands popping up all over the place here. Oh, Jake, fellow rider.
That was a very nice presentation, Mr. Henrichsen.
Thank you, Jake.
Do you think you will continue to pursue to be a mountain bike racer or a mechanic of any kind?
Well, I would like to have a job in the industry, but racers, you have to really be on another level of fast to become a racer. I would love to do it, but a mechanic would be pretty cool, but not for like my entire life. I wouldn't want that to be my main job, but maybe like engineering for a bike company. I don't know. I would like to pursue a career in the industry though.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Henrichsen, thank you for that. I now have no illusions that I can fix my own bike. I'll leave that to you, perhaps.
All right.
I have a couple questions for you. Actually, one, I think we need to recognize you for getting the bike park off the ground. Thank you so much. That is a huge boon for our community. This question that I have is, what did you do to your bike? You said you did something.
Yes, so
But I missed it.
I threaded my steer tube so I could fit a tool made by One Up. This is just a company in Swan.
Can you show
I
it? You
can.
put a toolkit in your bike?
It's pretty much just so I won't have to carry tools on me and they're just always in my bike.
That's awesome. It's like a spy bike.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well done, Mr. Henrichsen. I have a quick question. You mentioned earlier that one of the tips that you would give Scott was to not be too forward on your bike
Yeah.
because that might lead to him crashing. And my question in response to that is, when you're in downhill and your seat is that high up, aren't you leaning forward?
Yeah, so when you're riding any trail going down or just at a pump track, you want to drop your seat as much as possible. I do that just with a button on my bars because I have a dropper post. It gets you can get lower on the bike, so you'll be in more control and just never ride downhill or at a pump track with your seat up. It's just, you're gonna fall.
Thank you.
Very good presentation, Mr. Henrichsen. One quick question. What is your favorite part of the bike?
Well, I don't really have a favorite part of the bike because you need every part for the bike to work. So I would just say the entire bike would be my favorite. Yeah, so I can't really answer that. Oh God, these are the hard ones.
Your assistant here.
Yes.
Great.
Great job, Mr. Henrichsen. I know you're very passionate about mountain biking. I have 2 questions. My first one is, you said you crash hard. I'm wondering if you could let everybody know your hardest crash.
Yes.
And my second one is how do Newton's laws relate to a bike crash?
That's a good question. So the first one, my biggest crash was when I was riding with Callum Baker, who's sitting over there, and I overshot a jump to flat and bottomed out my suspension, went down and popped my collarbone out of place and broke my AC joint. That was probably my worst crash. And then how Newton's laws relate to a fall. That's a harder one, but say somehow you fly off the bike by doing something, and then you have momentum, and the only way you'll stop is another force in the opposing direction. So if you end up hitting the ground, the opposing force is the ground, and then you'll come to a rest. So that could answer it. Yes.
Good presentation, Mr. Henrichsen. I don't have a question. I just wanted to call you Mr. Henrichsen. No, I do have a question. Might be the only time in my life I call you Mr. Henrichsen, though. I work with body mechanics.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you can talk about, in high-end bicycles, what components there are that you wouldn't find in low-end bicycles that help with your body mechanics.
Definitely the dropper post. So your dropper post is a high-end bike part. It lets you control the height of your seat just with a button on the lever. This can help with body mechanics because when you're climbing up a hill, you don't want to be really low and like hunched over. You want to be in a more upright position. Also, you want your legs to almost be completely straight at the bottom of your pedal stroke. So that helps with the body mechanics. So I would definitely say the dropper post would help the most.
Thank you.
Oh, here's the hard one.
Mr. Henrichsen, I've endured your bike in our living room, in our front deck, everywhere.
Yes.
Which is great, and I love it. But one thing that I want you to explain to me clearly is, and in a practical sense, on your bike, is how the gears actually work.
So,
But go to the bike and show me.
I'm just gonna take this sheet with me. The biggest cog in the back, and your smallest gear would be the smallest one. So, a reason why it might be the reason why it's easier to pedal in your high gear is because you have a low gear ratio, which is the amount of rotations of the wheel per rotation of the cranks. So, think of it like if you're pedaling up a hill, it may feel easier to pedal because you're actually doing less. When you push the crank, you might only be making the wheel rotate 0.76 times per one rotation of the crank. Compared to if you're in your smallest gear, you could make it be rotating possibly like 1.7. So in theory, you're doing less work, which is a reason why it feels easier, and you'll have a low gear ratio. Does that answer your question, Mr. Henrichsen?
Yes, Mr. Henrichsen, well done.
Great.
More Henrichsen, sorry.
Oh, God.
So this is actually a question from your grandparents, who are quite sad that they couldn't be here, so they sent this in from Scotland. Hello, Mr. Henrichsen. Over the years, we have listened to you explaining in great detail the technique and skill you use while mountain biking. Today, could you please tell us what your feelings are as you tackle a mountain at full speed? Do you just let go, or is safety at the back of your mind?
Well, you always have to be careful, but you also just don't want to go barreling down. As Jeff told me when I was riding with him, you want to find the flow of the trail, which will let you go faster, and generally it'll be more safe. But also you do have to have the sense of caution in your head so you don't do something you know you're not ready for and hurt yourself. So, yeah, gotta be pretty careful. That's the baby.
Well done, Viggo.
Thank you.
I first just have a comment. Thank you for inspiring and being a part of the hopefully growing mountain bike community on Bowen. I think it's awesome that you're into the sport, and for having young kids on the island, I hope we can grow the awareness of trails, and the bike park is a great start, so good job, for sure.
Thank you.
My question is around your, how do you hope and plan to take care of yourself and, and care for your body if you hope, obviously, to have a long-term career and recreational life? What are your top
So,
three, like,
I would
rest
say
and recovery?
So to recover, well, you want to be physically fit regardless if you're biking, because you don't want to bonk and just lose all energy. Also, when racing, a way to like keep care of yourself is what your husband told me, is that to carbo load so you have long-lasting energy, and you won't, compared to sugar as well, you just use your energy really quickly. Carbs will do the opposite, so that was a big one I learned. And also, pace yourself. Don't just go all out. Make sure to keep it going at a normal rate so you don't immediately use all your energy and then you just can't go any further.
Mr. Henrichsen, great presentation.
It's Ted.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Three questions, two easies and one more interesting.
Okay.
I didn't quite understand the difference between a damper and a shock absorber. I think I got it when you said something a minute ago.
In your suspension, your suspension, you have your fork and your rear shock. The damper is in your suspension. There's your rebound and compression. So your rebound is how fast your travel will come back. And then your compression, you can also think of it as a lockout, so it won't let your suspension move, is what a lot of like companies market as on lower bikes. On higher end, you can have high and low speed compression, which is, it's very tunable to make your fork work for you. So a shock absorber, it's pretty much the same thing, really.
Yeah, we didn't, in my day, Sonny, we didn't have dampers and shock absorbers.
Yeah.
I can say that kind of stuff now. Second question, I'm most intrigued by this. You said in order to be allowed into your course, the gentleman running the course had to determine if your work and attitude was up to standard.
Yes.
That was an interesting thing. So my question is this. What exactly does that look like? So either you could say, well, what my work and attitude had to look like, or the counter would be, what would be a case of someone who the work and attitude wasn't up to scratch?
Well, so when I met to meet with Jeff, he definitely wanted to learn about me. So he asked me a lot of personal questions, and then he kind of like got a sense of who I was. So then before he actually accepted me into his course, I volunteered at his shop to see if like I had the right attitude, like if I was like always happy when I was there, or like kind of just down like going there just because I had to. So I think he thought I was good enough, so he let me into his course, and by work standards, he's a very professional shop, so you can't just be messing around. You gotta finish your job if you have it. So
yeah.
I would say those are work and attitude.
That's great. One other last quick question. You said you like that bike because it's, you said, a fun and playful bike.
Yes.
And so my question is, what's an example of a stern and severe bike?
Oh, well, a lot geometry. So your geometry on your bike will depend on how like playful it is. That's a big one. Like your your head angle, my bad. So your head angle, like your bottom bracket height, that can all affect on how your bike feels. So if you have like a super slack low bike, like that's what a lot of the companies are doing now, it's gonna help on the downhill a lot, but it won't help on the up and won't be as like maneuverable, but you'll be able to like go through stuff a lot faster. So this bike I think is the perfect mix of both, because you can still climb and ascend very well. It's not the best for climbing, but regardless, it's just the best bike, I think.
Mr. Henrichsen, I really like your shirt.
Thank you. It's not mine.
It's not yours?
No, it's my friend's.
Oh.
I had to borrow it.
Can we see the back?
Yes, you can.
Awesome.
Called through shred, yes.
And why did you choose to wear this shirt today?
Well, I wanted to be, no one else in my class would be in costume for theirs, so I decided to mix it up. except for Ursula, my bad. So I decided to wear a bike jersey, and I didn't own one, so I called my friend who owns this, and he kindly let me borrow it.
Great, it looks awesome. And I notice around school you often wear really cool biking gear.
Yes, I bike into school sometimes, so if it's cold I wear biking pants, but I don't want to carry another pair of pants with me, so I'll just wear those.
And how does that help you when you're biking?
Well, they are more durable than normal like pants you would wear on a, like if you go riding in maybe just like jeans, they're not going to be as durable fabric, or like they're not going to be fitted so you can pedal easier, so it will be stiffer in some parts. So really the clothing you wear when you ride can affect how you feel and how you ride the bike. Yeah.
Okay, we've got time for a couple more. Let's head over here.
Great presentation, Mr. Henrichsen. Would you ever like to go into dirt jumping or a downhill bike maybe?
Well, I do enjoy dirt jumping because jumping is one of my favorite things to do, but there are dirt jump specific bikes, and currently I'm not in the financial state to buy a new dirt jump bike. Currently I can only afford one all-around bike, which is why I have the bike I have now, but I would like to get a downhill and dirt jump bike.
Great presentation, Mr. Henrichsen. I was just wondering, in your opinion, what was the most interesting part of this Masterworks?
Well, I think the most interesting part was working at Jeff's shop. It definitely helped me understand what it's like to work in a shop, and what I learned there was very useful. So the most interesting thing I learned was probably like how to service your suspension, because it's mainly actually your dropper post. It's quite a complicated system, so you do have to learn quite a bit and know what you're doing to do it. So I would say that's the most interesting. Also, like building wheels interesting, but it's also like very, very time consuming, so I wouldn't say that's the most.
Good job, Mr. Henrichsen. I really love your bike. It's very cool.
Thank you.
What do you think is like the coolest or the most impressive jump in your opinion that you've ever done?
Oh, jump? I don't know, probably in Coast Gravity Park on the Sunshine Coast, just riding there with my friends. We do some fun stuff, so we do some pretty big jumps, so I would say that's the biggest jump I've probably done there was like 24, 30, I don't know.
Mr. Henrichsen, I have two questions for you. First, you seem very experienced, so what is your best trick or something like that on your bike? And also, how many helmets or bikes do you currently own?
Well, I have a few cracked and dented helmets just lying around my house. So I would say, I probably have like 5 helmets. I have 6 helmets, 2 that are the usable ones. And then, what was the other question?
What would be your best trick?
Oh, well, I'm not really a trick rider. I mainly focus on like just speed and having fun. Like, I can toboggan, which is when you grab the seat and turn your bars. I'm learning how to suicide though, which is both hands off in the air. Yeah.
Wow. All right, let's have one more question from Fry here.
You said you're not a very tricky person, but on your tramp bike, what is the hardest one you can do?
A trampoline bike is when you take all the sharp, dangerous parts off your bike and put a bunch of padding on it so you don't make holes in your trampoline. And pretty much you can just learn tricks on that. So I've built 2, and the coolest thing I can do on that, I don't know, maybe a truck driver, which is a 360 bar spin. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. We have all, I'm sure you guys are feeling you have an elevated knowledge of bike riding and the mechanics, so congratulations, Viggo.